I don't know about you guys, when I was growing up as a kid, I always wanted my walkout song to be Britney Spears. I don't know about you. So Kevin kind of stole my thunder here, but on my way to this conference, who here was here at this conference last year, by a show of hands? A lot of people. So I flipped my car going 70 on the highway and almost died on the way to this conference. As I'm sure you can imagine, this was my vehicle after the accident. And so the car, I hit a really bad storm. Car started hydroplaning. I don't know, anyone here by show of hands ever hydroplaned a car before? Okay, wow, a lot of people. Okay, great opportunity if you've never tried it to shit your pants. Really great opportunity. So I hydroplaned this car, and all of a sudden, the car starts fishtailing a little bit. I did what every bad driver does when you start fishtailing and hydroplaning. What I do, I try to control it, right? So the car spins out, I hit the embankment, car starts flipping over, and when the car finally landed on its feet or on its wheels, I had like the most toxic reaction of all time. Instead of being like, oh my God, I'm so grateful, thank you, thank you God, I'm alive. I said the words to myself, I am so fucked. And I was screwed for so many reasons. I won't dive into all the reasons right now, but I was in a really weird life position and a really weird life situation at the time. And so this was a very eye-opening experience for me. I came to the event, I had bloody knuckles, was kind of limping around. I don't know if you guys remember, I was not really able to walk much. But I showed up at the event, I played full out, and actually on the second day of the event, I had to get rushed to the hospital again by someone on the Real Leaders team. I was having chest pain. And I work out a good amount, so I know what chest pain feels like after a chest day, and this was not the chest pain after a chest day. So I'm talking to the doctor, and the doctor's like, you don't have a heart attack, you don't have a stroke or anything, but one thing's really clear. Your body is giving you a clear sign that it does not like what you're putting it through. Now, the doctor couldn't see that in some CAT scan or X-ray, but what the doctor didn't know is I was in a toxic business relationship. I was exiting a toxic personal relationship. And so over the next 19 minutes, you'll hear about my PhD in toxicity, self-proclaimed PhD in toxicity. And I spent many years in the chemical sector. And so today what we're going to talk about are really 3 different types of toxins. Toxins in your relationships, toxic chemicals that exist in the environment, and then toxic business practices that are driving us away from our purpose and our intentions as impact-driven companies. And so who here by a show of hands has been in a toxic relationship? I want everyone to look around. You got 2 types of people right now. You got self-aware people, and you have liars, okay? We've all been in toxic relationships. The reason why I say this is not necessarily from an interpersonal level. We've all been in toxic relationships because the most important relationship we have is the one with ourselves. The way we talk to ourselves, the way we think. This is how we show up in the world. And if you don't think that you've had a toxic relationship with yourself or a toxic relationship with others, anyone know someone who has a toxic relationship with their phone? Anyone? Maybe some of you individually have a toxic relationship with your phone. Anyone know someone who has a toxic idea? Maybe not so much. Maybe you've been in a conversation with someone and they finish talking and you think to yourself, that is the most toxic shit I have ever heard in my life. Yes, we've all been there. So we've all been in toxic relationships. We're all familiar with how toxic relationships work. And I'd encourage you to think about some of the relationships in your life more holistically than just the relationships that you have with others. So this is a picture of me from a few years back, before my transition. I'm just kidding. This is a picture of the first love of my life, not the woman, the face wash. This is the face wash that I used as a child. It's called Clean and Clear Morning Burst with Bursting Beads. Who here knows what this face wash is or has seen this on the shelves? Oh my God, okay, not many millennials in the room. That's how I know. Yeah, see, the millennials know this face wash very, very well. This was the face wash that I used for 15 years, twice a day. And I don't know if you could tell, there's little bursting beads in there. Anyone know what those bursting beads are made out of? Plastic. So I spent 15 years rubbing little balls of microplastic on my face multiple times a day. And this was something that I loved it. I loved how it felt on my skin, how tight it was. I loved how clean I felt after. But what I found out over the past few years is this chemical that I thought was really good for me, that was cleaning my face, was actually really, really bad. And I found out through a website called EWG. Anyone know what the website EWG is by a show of hands? Great, okay, you guys are gonna love this conversation then. So I went on EWG and I looked at this chemical, and it turns out on a scale of 1 to 10, this chemical was a 7, 7 being really, really bad. And if you go look at the ingredients here, talc, fragrance, this chemical is so much worse than the store shelves make it out to be. Now, the problem here is that this chemical is sold in pretty much every supermarket in America. Every CVS, every Walgreens. It's very accessible. And one of the problems that we have as a society is a lot of the sustainable chemicals that we want and that we could use really aren't super accessible. And so I use a platform called EWG to figure out what the chemicals are that are really, really, really good for us and what the chemicals are that are really, really bad for us. The short story of this is most of the chemicals that we use every day are really, really horrible for us. They're disrupting our gut biomes, our endocrine systems. They're creating neurotoxicity. They're creating all these problems in our lives. And unfortunately, these chemicals don't raise their hands. We don't know that these chemicals are causing these problems. So we go about our lives not knowing that we're actually being controlled by the chemistries that we're using on a day-to-day basis. So what I'm proposing to you today is that you really start thinking about reducing the chemical exposure in your day-to-day lives. One of the problems that we have as a society is that these chemicals, they're not gonna raise their hand. They're not gonna volunteer. They're not gonna tell you how toxic they are. It's really your duty, your responsibility, and your obligation to figure out how the chemistries that you're reliant on a day-to-day basis are impacting your day-to-day life. These toxins are hijacking our biologies, and it's really our responsibility to figure out what are these toxins, how are they impacting us, and what are more sustainable alternatives that can make a positive impact on our lives. So what I want to promote to you guys today is this big question. What are other toxins that could be negatively impacting my life that I'm currently not aware of? So everyone in this room has a version of Clean and Clear Morning Burst with bursting beads in their lives. And what I'm encouraging you to do in this conversation is really figure out what is that chemical that I'm using that's really bad for me that maybe I've been using for 10, 15, 20, 30, for some of you guys 100 years. Kidding. And how do we remove that chemical from our life and find a more sustainable alternative? So who here is familiar with the term ultra-processed foods? By a show of hands. Oh, good. That's how I know I'm in a room of sustainability-minded people. So unfortunately, 90 to 95% of the serotonin in the human body is actually produced in our gut biome. We don't think of it this way because we think of serotonin as something that happens in our brain. But really, it's happening in our gut biomes. And there's this war that's happening in the world, and it's not just happening on the internet, it's happening in our gut biomes because a lot of the chemistry that we produce in our brain actually starts in our guts. And so if you look back to history, in the 1980s, there was a lot of buyouts of big food companies like General Foods and Kraft Foods and Nabisco. And turns out all these companies were purchased by tobacco companies. Well, what happened? The tobacco companies realized that demand for tobacco was going down, so what did they do? They started buying up all the food companies. And the same psychology that they used and how they engineered tobacco products, they now took into the food products. So not to tell you the names of the companies that bought these ones out, because I don't want to be put on a bad guy list, but a lot of the ultra-processed foods that we use in our day-to-day lives are actually negatively impacting our gut biomes. And what's negatively impacting our gut biomes is negatively impacting our brain chemistry, our hormone production, and is creating neurotoxins that are impacting how we think, how we act, how we feel, and how we show up in this world. But if you thought the ultra-processed foods were bad, I got some great news about the fresh foods that we eat every day. So this is a list of the Dirty Dozen. It's put out annually by EWG. Turns out the dirtiest food in the supply chain is actually strawberries. which is really, really frustrating. I'm a big strawberry fan. My dream as a kid was to have strawberries the size of my fist that I could eat like apples. But it turns out that all berries are actually really high in toxin exposure. And the reason is that berries have really thin and porous skins. And so when they spray berries with chemicals, these chemicals get absorbed by the berries, and then we eat the berries, and then all of a sudden those berries filled with Roundup are getting stuck in our biologies. And so there's actually this really famous story about Tom Brady, of all people. Tom Brady doesn't eat strawberries. Well, why doesn't Tom Brady eat strawberries? Turns out that you can take conventionally grown strawberries, you can put them in a juicer, and you can take that strawberry juice and spray it on new crops as a pesticide. And that's just a means to show you guys how deeply ingrained these negative chemistries are into the food that we eat every day. So here's a picture of farmers' clothes before Roundup. Here's a picture of the farmers' clothes after Roundup. And what do you notice? I mean, this guy is in a hazmat suit walking through the fields of the foods that we eat every day. And so I know it's not possible to eat organic at every step of the way. If you're eating conventionally grown fruits, my recommendation, put it in some water, let it soak in some baking soda for 15 minutes. Try to get as much of the pesticides off as humanly possible, wash them off, and then eat them. I really got into this through the company that I started 5 years ago. It's a company named Heartland. We grew natural fibers, and we turned those into plastic additives to replace materials like talc, calcium carbonate, and fiberglass. So I spent the last 5 years in the chemical sector. I have a lot of crazy stories about my Heartland experience that I definitely don't have time to go into today. But in this experience, our first employee was a gentleman named Eric Osterman. And Eric was a sustainability executive at a big contract manufacturer called Jabil. And he came on board because he really saw this vision of what we could create at Heartland. Our goal was to create the most sustainable company on Earth. And we were going to do that by replicating supply chains of carbon negative materials. And I was so obsessed with this message and this opportunity of creating a carbon negative future and by creating Earth's most sustainable company. And in this conversation with Eric, he sat me down and he's like, Jesse, he's like, you're looking at sustainability all wrong. You're so focused on CO2 that you're missing the bigger picture. He said, Jesse, think about the food you eat, the thoughts you have, how you show up in your relationships. Are these things sustainable? And this conversation with Eric Osterman really flipped my head on how I look at the world of sustainability. Because I was using a reductionistic mindset to solve a holistic problem. I was reducing the sustainability problem down to CO2, but really what Eric was offering me in this moment was the opportunity to become a more sustainable leader. And this is the opportunity that I want to offer everyone in this room today, is to start operating from a place of sustainability, not in terms of CO2, but by how you think, how you act, how you show up in your relationships. And through that lens, you now have the opportunity to become a more sustainable leader. So, some of the synonyms for sustainable I've listed here. My favorite is efficient, because every capitalist on planet Earth thinks in terms of efficiency. And if every capitalist that thinks in terms of efficiency understood that what is sustainable is efficient, then I think we'd have a little more opportunity to show the capitalists in the world how sustainable solutions are efficient solutions, and efficient solutions will stand the test of time. So what I'm really curious to know in the room, and feel free to scream this out, is how do you define healthy in one word? Anybody? Balance. Local. Healthy is holistic. It's personal, it's professional, it's occupational, it's environmental. It's how we live our lives. And everyone in this room has the opportunity to become a healthier and a more sustainable leader. This is not about carbon footprint. This is about showing up for ourselves and our communities in a way that's replicatable. So what I'd like everyone to do is not necessarily listen to all my recommendations and suggestions. What I'd like you to do is really tap into your internal compass. Really look within and really understand, what is it that I need? What is it that can really help me become a more sustainable leader? Because through that lens, you can lead your communities, you can lead your companies, you can lead your families, and once you tap into your North Star, you can really become the sustainable leader that we need on this planet. And so what I'd like to do right now is just offer you a few tools that can help you identify toxins in your day-to-day life, with the hope and the aspiration that you actually find the toxic chemicals that are negatively impacting your life, and that you use that as an opportunity to transition to cleaner and more sustainable chemistries. So I mentioned ewg.org. This is a QR code to their website. They have this amazing, amazing platform that allows you to really look up any chemical that you use on a day-to-day basis. Think your face wash, your deodorant, your toothpaste. These are all chemistries that have multiple ingredients in them, and oftentimes the ingredients are not put in there to help us become better. They're put in there as fillers, and those fillers take away from us in many, many, many different ways. So this is a great website that I definitely recommend. On ewg.org, they also have a tap water database. I won't put on my tinfoil hat for this part of the conversation, but I'll just say there's a lot of data to back that a lot of the water that we're consuming in our day-to-day lives, unfortunately, is not super healthy for us. So this is a great way to look at the water in your local communities and ecosystems and understand what are the toxins that are in that. I'm not even talking about fluoride. I'm talking about the hundreds of other chemicals that happen to end up in local water supplies. If you go to the supermarket and you're looking for a mobile app that could potentially be helpful, Yuka is one of the best apps I've ever used in my life. I take it to every supermarket I go to. This app will allow you to scan the barcode of any food product and look at all the ingredients and understand exactly which ingredients are not good for you. And I'm gonna show you right now and show you my underbelly of two products that I really, really love that happen to not be super good for me. Who here likes sriracha, by a show of hands? Oh man, sorry to crush your souls. Turns out sriracha, not as good for us as we thought. I grew up on Clausen pickles. I got a nice Jewish mother who loved having kosher pickles at home. Turns out they have sodium benzoate and a lot of other really toxic additives in there. So would encourage you to download the Yuka app. There's other apps out there. Think Dirty is another great one. These apps allow you to scan barcodes and really understand the food that you're eating and the negative impact of the toxins in that food. Identifying toxins in your business. I know this is the one that you're all waiting for. Expectation gaps, by far, is the biggest reason that I've seen, not just for problems in professional relationships, but also problems in personal relationships. What I find personally is that expectation gaps create communication gaps, and communication gaps and expectation gaps are really the precipice for a lot of the problems that we face in our relationships. So these communication and expectation gaps, they ripple into our employees, our customers, our vendors, our governments, our investors, our local communities. These create problems, and all of a sudden, these expectation and communication gaps ripple into other areas of our lives and start to create toxicity in our relationships. Operational gaps, you guys are very familiar with most of these. Scott did a great job talking about a lot of the cultural gaps, although he didn't frame it like that. A lot of the business tools that we use today can help solve these problems. Technology gaps, many of you are probably experiencing this with AI right now and trying to close the gap from the technologies that you've used for many years into the technologies that you will use moving forward. The unspoken third toxin of the 21st century is not having a sustainability strategy. I firmly believe that by 2050, there's going to be a graveyard of companies who did not make the transition. And those companies are going to be on the wrong side of history, and their competitors are going to be on the right side of history. So I don't know about any of you in the room. It seems like most of you are pretty sustainability minded. So I'm assuming that most of you have a sustainability strategy or have integrated this into some form of your business. But if you haven't, I would definitely encourage you to talk to anyone else in the room about this because you have a great opportunity to lead your community and your business in sustainability moving forward. So over the past few months, I've been very, very blessed to work with some amazing sustainable materials companies. I'm now starting to work with more chemical companies and manufacturers, really focus on integrating sustainable alternatives into their supply chains. I'm so glad to announce the launch of Alt Labs right now. It's very, very near and dear to my heart. I've brought on 2 people onto my team full time. That has been the most stressful experience of my life, bringing on a team of people. And I'm very, very excited for a lot of the work that I've been able to do. One of the things that I'd like to really quickly touch on before we close out here is anyone here familiar with the law of attraction, by show of hands? Law of attraction, okay. Got some law of attraction fans in here. The key principle and the core principle of the law of attraction is thoughts become things. Thoughts become things. And if we want to build a sustainable physical world, then what we have to do is start with the sustainable unphysical world. And sustainable things start with sustainable thoughts. And so I bring this up because the conversation that I had with my employee, Eric Osterman, really changed my life. And he really encouraged me to start thinking in terms of sustainability. And I want to offer you guys that opportunity today. So I've really enjoyed this experience. Who here feels a little better equipped to identify toxins in their day-to-day life? By a show of hands. Everyone. Oh my God, I did something good. I really appreciate everyone showing up for this. I really, really do think that reducing exposure to toxins is the #1 way we can take control of our biology, our brain chemistry, our gut biomes, and the future of our communities and the people that we love and care about. Thank you very much.
Jesse Henry, everybody.